About a year ago, I started dating someone who worked as a state park ranger, who I'll call Jay. Jay lived on the state park property in a 2-bedroom house tucked in the woods. We set the alarm and settled into bed around midnight with Jay's 2 dogs between us, and a 3rd dog crated beside the bed. For some reason I couldn't fall asleep, so I lay listening to the dogs snoring and the deafening silence surrounding us while Jay slept. And then it started. A repetitive bouncing sound of some sort was coming from outside the window, less than a few feet from where I was laying on the bed, as if someone was dribbling a basketball in cement. The pace would speed up and slow down. The sound would become louder and softer. This continued for well over 2 hours. I wholeheartedly wanted to believe what I was hearing were simply sounds of nature, so I ignored it. Next came the creaks in the walls. I know that houses make sounds, but this was unlike anything I had heard before. These sounds started in the hallway as very, very faint creaks. The creaks became louder as they reached Jay's bedroom, and would happen on one wall at a time, going counterclockwise around the room, until it eventually reached the wall beside me. The creak in the wall beside me was so loud I jumped, and the 2 dogs jolted from their sleep. All the while, I'm still hearing a bouncing ball outside the window, and I'm getting more nervous by the minute. And then at 3 a.m, I hear it. I hear the most ungodly, terrifying growl shrieking from the center of the house. It was so loud that Jay flies off the bed, grabs a shotgun hanging on the wall adjacent to the bed and shouts, "Is somebody in the house?" and takes off down the hallway towards the sound. The dogs are going berserk and I am in tears, absolutely beside myself, pleading with Jay that it's not a person. Jay comes back into the bedroom after not finding an intruder or anything of the sort, and says it must have been one of the dogs. I tell him it was certainly not the dogs, and I was awake the entire night and the dogs were asleep in the room with us. Maybe an animal got caught underneath the house. Yeah, maybe, I say. Somehow, after I've calmed down a bit, I drift off to sleep. The next thing I know, Jay is on top of me with his hands around my throat, with the meanest look on his face, jerking my head back and forth, suffocating me, hurting me. I can't make any sound and I'm struggling to push Jay away. And that's when I wake up. It was all a vivid dream. Jay is asleep beside me. In the morning, we walk into the den to find the heater turned on full blast. It was the middle of summer. Jay only uses it during winter months, as it is the original furnace and quite tricky to operate. I'm convinced something in that house did not want me there. That growl will haunt me forever. First of all, a bit about me. I have never believed in ghosts or spirits. I've always been rational, and I'm not someone to freak out at the drop of a hat. I moved into the place I am at now about 2 months ago. It's about 30 years old, and it's a rented townhouse type of thing in Australia. My first night in the house ended up in me calling the police. The sliding glass door that leads to the backyard smashed, and I thought it was an intruder. Police came. I search. No one around. The police are polite and very understanding, because hearing a huge glass door smashed to pieces at 3 a.m. isn't very comforting. Glass can't smash on its own. I did research and that calmed my nerves. Shower screens, glass doors are known to sometimes just go bang, due to all sorts of glass science or whatever. A few nights later, I am awoken by the sound of a man laughing in the room opposite my bedroom. I woke up and really tried to calm down because I am aware tiredness and dreams can lead to audible and sometimes visual hallucinations. I focus myself, and the sound is still there. It's not a scary or demonic laugh, just a normal male chuckle. In between the laughter there are sighs, like the sound people make when they are reminiscing. Hope that makes sense. I grab my knife and walk into the room. No one there. A few weeks later, the usual shit starts happening. Doors banging, footsteps, cupboards closing, etc. This can all be chalked up to environmental influences, so I don't panic too much, but it is freaky. This is where things get worse. I went to bed early one night, and I was laying down listening to a storm outside my window. Who doesn't love to do that? I heard a door slam. It was the same room with the laughing man. I don't panic, because there is a storm outside, so I figure it's the wind. Then I heard a scream coming from just outside my bedroom door. It was a very loud, "Hey!" There was no doubt whatsoever this time. It was 100% coming from inside my house. I wasn't previously asleep, so it wasn't an hallucination. I screamed, got aggressive, grabbed my knife and flung my door open. Once again, nothing. The last incident is the most recent. It happened last night. I went to walk into my bedroom to grab my wallet. It was about 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I heard a voice from the same opposite room. I stopped and listened. It was saying, "Just leave. Get out." What scared me the most was the accent. It wasn't an Australian accent or anything that I could recognize. It sounded like a different species trying to speak English. It sounded deranged. When I was about 16, I played with a Ouija board, and we encountered Zozo. I always assumed it was someone moving the cup, and I never worried about it. Is it possible this is a demon? I need advice or opinions or anything. Not sure what to do. For those who don't know, the Uintas are a national forest about 2 hours east of Salt Lake City. I'll start with the first and most mild experience. I went out with a group of friends to spend the weekend rock climbing and fishing. The event happened on the first evening. As we were driving back from our campsite, my buddy suggested that we check out a community art project called the Fairy Garden, located in a massive river drainage system. The drainage created tons of perfectly polished spherical rocks. Yet the place has been around long enough that small trees have started to grow up. People would come and paint and decorate the rocks. The whole place had a pretty weird vibe to it. It was very maze-like. My friend and I decided to see how long the place stretched on, so we began to hike out in one direction. The whole place was huge. We must have walked a mile, and we were still seeing these rocks that people had painted and put out. The trees looked much weirder at this point. They were all very thin and arranged in an almost perfect grid. I realized that my friend had wandered off from me, so I began to call out his name. I began to hear somebody calling my name from behind me, but it sounded too distant to allow me to tell if it was my friend or not. I turned and began to walk toward the sound, when I heard somebody running up from behind me again. It was my friend, who had heard me calling and ran over. I was pretty freaked out, but I still think that this could have been me working myself up because I was in the woods. The second experience supports a more obvious and malevolent presence. Second day. We are fishing after a day of climbing, and I'm not getting any luck, so I decide to take a loop around the lake with my dog. I get to the other side of the lake where the land becomes steeper and has some cliffs and boulders around it. My dog freezes, turns to look uphill and starts whining. My initial guess was a bear, so I told my dog to sit and began to hike uphill. I reached a cliff with a very easy staircase-like feature on it, and I scrambled over to see what was above it. I was in a boulder field, lots of very cool rock features and stuff. I began to look around and I determined that whatever had spooked my dog wasn't nearby. I noticed what looked like a dark figure behind a tree about 30 feet ahead of me, and I quickly freaked out and turned to get back to my friends. As I was down climbing the section I had climbed up, I began to hear my name being called again, very distant, and not obviously male or female. Suddenly, a bit of rock I was holding on to rips off, sending me a good 3-foot fall, and then rolled me about 10 feet down a hill. Besides scrapes and bruises, I was okay, so I quickly got up to continue on. I heard my name being called. This time it sounded much louder, and I could feel anger and hostility in the voice. The voices stopped promptly when I got back with my friends. The dog was on edge and jumpy for the rest of the trip, and that was what really made me wonder what was going on, since my dog is usually never scared of things like this. I definitely think that there is some weird stuff going on in those mountains. I know there are some pretty good explanations for what I've experienced, but it just felt very wrong to me. The fact that whatever entity there is may have caused me to fall while climbing shows that this may be a dangerous spirit. Utah granite is pretty damn strong. Even untouched rock wouldn't split off in the way it did. Hey guys, Freezer here. Well, I know that's a bit different than my usual video, but I've decided it's time to expand my horizons. So for the next little while, I'm going to try doing a mixture of different types of stories. Sometimes it'll be paranormal videos, sometimes it'll just be the standard true scary stories, and maybe if I can find the stories, some UFO encounters as well. We'll see what works and what people are enjoying. So until next time guys, thank you very much for listening, and take care of yourselves.